Welcome back. Now that we have looked how we can declare variables and name them, basically how to create named containers, let's look at how we can assign values to them, right? Now let's look at the assignment. Now, basic summary before we move on to Eclipse, we are going to use equal to sign as a operator for assignment. There are a couple rules that we will need to follow when we assign a variable, assign a value to a variable. It has to be of the same type, and assignments can be done on the same line or as declaration or in a separate line. Okay. Now, remembering these three rules, let's go back to our Eclipse workspace. Awesome. Now that we have declarations for byte, short, int, etc., let's assign values. Now, when we declared it, we said that there is an operator, there is equal to operator that we're gonna use for assignment. And we also said that we can assign a value on the same line or on another line, right? So let's, for the sake of practice, let's assign value to hours on the same line. Byte hours is equal to, let's say, 11 o'clock, right? 11. Great. This is how you assign a value to a variable. Let's do this. Population of a country and is equal to, let's say, I don't know, 10 million, right? 10, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, days. These are the examples of assigning on the same line as declaring a variable. What happened here? This hours container has number 11 stored in it. Population of a country container or variable has number 10 million stored in it. Okay. Now let's try assigning a variable on a separate line, on a different line. We said we declared a variable of type short and we called it days. Let's do this. We're gonna assign value to days on a different line, 365. And always remember your semicolon. Semicolon is gonna finish your statement. Okay. So these are two basic ways of assigning a variable. You can assign a value to it in the same line right when you are declaring it, or you can assign the value to it at a later stage. And let me show you something else. You can assign value here, or you can take this, cut it, paste it here. Doesn't matter. Anywhere in the code, you can assign value to it. Okay, as long as assignment follows declaration. For example, let's put it back so as not to confuse us. We have a container called days. Do we have container? We have container called hours. Do we have container called seconds? No. Let's say how many seconds do we have in a minute? 60. This is not going to work. Compiler is going to complain. And it will say, if you hover over to this error message, it will say seconds cannot be resolved to a variable. So there is no variable, right? We have a name, we have a value, but what is it? Of what type is this? Is this int, short, byte, string, whatever? Let's do int. Now it's not gonna complain. Okay. So couple things as we go and assign these variables for practice. Do you remember how we were supposed to assign a value to a long? Let's say population of planet Earth 7,530,000,123,123. Right? What are we missing here? Why is it red? Why is it complaining? The literal 7 billion and etc. of type int is out of range. Do you remember when we spoke about primitives, numeric primitives, we said that for Java, any number is an int unless you specifically say that this is a long? Yes, this is what happens here. When you don't put L here, your compiler is going to complain saying that why do you put int and why do you assign an int value to a long variable, to a long container. If you want to assign something to a long container, make sure that it's a long. Or use, so you can use a lowercase l. This is a repetition of what we've seen before, but preferably use uppercase L, because number one and lowercase l can be confused. Okay, so let's use uppercase L. Now, the same principle applies for float. So degrees is equal to, let's say, 95.7. I'm sorry, 95.7. And if I close this, again, it will complain. If I close the statement, it will complain. It will say that type mismatch cannot convert from double to float. As we said earlier, any regular number is going to be assumed to be of type int, and any floating point number is going to be assumed as of type double, unless you put f here. Okay? Double distance is equal to, for an example, 4,578.9962, for example, right? And we can put D here. This is optional though, okay? So just for you to remember, always use F at the end of floats and L at the end of long number declarations and assignments, okay? You don't need anything for anything else. Now, we're looking at char. Symbols is equal to, we said we're going to use single quotes within to declare a char. Let me do spaces here to explain you that what we did here is we took a symbols and assigned a value to it, right? And this value is a semicolon. Now the symbols char has a value of a semicolon, and that has nothing to do with the semicolon that I'm using here. This semicolon is in single quotes. It means this is the value of symbols. Okay, so let's do this. Let's create a new char. Let's call it exclamation mark is equal to, how do we assign value to it? Single quotes, exclamation mark, close the statement. Char question mark is equal to single quote question mark, close the statement here. Char new line is equal to open single quotes \n, close your statement. Okay, you get the idea. So when you're assigning a value to a char, you need to put that value in a single quotes, and it has to be a single value. Multiple chars is equal to, this is not gonna work. Let's say question, exclamation. This is not gonna work. It's gonna complain, say that invalid character constant. There has to be one constant, not multiple. It doesn't say constants, right? Multiple chars is not gonna work. Let me do this. Let me leave it here as our code base, comment it out and say that this will not work. Okay, Boolean, how many values does Boolean have? 2, true or false, right? Is correct can be true, is correct can be false, and you write it like that, okay? True or false. Is correct cannot be 0, even though we know that from the coding perspective, this is 1, this is 0 from the computer perspective, but this is not. What is this? When I put 0, what type is it? Guess, please. Some of you might have int, and you say here, if you hover over the error, type mismatch, cannot convert from int to Boolean. If I would have said 0.789, what do you think the error message is going to read? It's going to say type mismatch cannot convert from double to Boolean. You see, type mismatch cannot convert from double to Boolean. Why? Because this is a number for Java. This is a floating number, floating point number, and this is of type double, right? Now, let's do this. Is not correct. Boolean is not correct. False. That's it. I do not want to reassign a variable just to avoid any confusion. Okay. Last but not least, our very special, excuse me, our very special non-primitive that starts with a capital letter, and it is called string. And we said string is what? String class represents character strings. I'm reading from IDE right now. All string literals in Java, such as ABC, are implemented as instances of this class. We'll not dive into the power vocabulary used in this sentence, but what we said is strings have to be put in a double quotation marks, right? Let's close the statement in order to avoid any red signs. And you can put anything here. Hello world, right? Let's create another string. String first name, or string course name is equal to, can I do this? Java for SDETs. I closed it. No, I can't do it. Why? Let's see. It cannot be resolved to a variable. If you hover over this, it says cannot be resolved to a variable. Java even doesn't know what type of a variable this is. There is no such variable type that will take a string like this. What you need to do, put this in quotation marks, and that's it. Your course name container holds a string value of Java for SDETs. Well, that's about it. We covered all the aspects, and we even went further by looking at different types of declarations. And we refreshed our memory on how we need to declare certain primitives, how we need to do what kind of special symbols, quotation marks we need to use for char and for string. Remember, out of primitives, the only primitive that takes any special treatment is char. You need to put the char character in single quotation marks, right? Amongst numbers, you have long that requires you to put L at the end of the number that is being stored as a long value. Out of floating point numbers, you have float that requires you to put F at the end of the value that you want to assign to a float variable. That's about it. Thank you very much for your time, and I will see you again when we will do more operations with variables.